Jay's perspective. Oof! Grunts Yasmin, as Mavak's feet impact her stomach. She splutters and laughs as the green-skinned girl licks her across the face. Easily enclosing the Twig's slim waist in her hands, Yasmin lifts her off herself and places her down on the ground. Mrekvin hamo wen nrot, Mavak, demrin en sak, she says kindly, in what, to my ears, sounds like flawless Twig. Hard not to be jealous of such a talent. The ability to become conversational in a language in a matter of weeks. The Twig girl gives a slightly disappointed-looking shrug of her shoulders, which seems to have roughly the same meaning to them as it does to Terrans, before scampering off. As wrong as it is, it's sort of hard not to think of them as children. They have what can only be described as ADHD energy, playful, energetic, and easily distracted. Their lack of anything we would consider social grace leads to them seeming to have a childlike frankness. You don't have to guess what a Twig thinks of you, they'll tell you. Oh, and, of course, they're the height of 3-year-olds, if that. I have to constantly remind myself not to coddle them or baby them, as my every broody instinct is trying to compel me to do. I have to remember that they are intelligent adults, however they act. Of course, having seen actual Twig children made that easier. So cute. Timid and nervous of us in a way the adults aren't, but totally makes sense when you imagine an early Iron Age child seeing a 4-meter tall giant who weighs most of a ton, which is what we are from their perspective. The younger Twig took a little longer to warm up to us. I saw what had to be a newborn in swaddling that wasn't much bigger than a large potato yesterday. My heart absolutely melted. I want one. Even now, it's a conscious effort I'm having to make not to squeal at the memory of the adorable little bean. Of course, something else that constantly brings home how adult the Twig are is just how many times I've been licked on the face since starting to interact with them. They display absolutely none of the hesitance or trepidation over interspecies intercourse that basically every other species in the galaxy does. Even most Terrans usually need a little time to adjust to a new species before their thoughts turn to the lascivious. Thankfully, I've not yet seen any of them get at all offended by having their propositions politely but firmly refused, aside from some playful teasing about us being greedies, which immediately went into my notes. Apparently they, at least semi-seriously, consider sex to be a resource that can be hoarded. I've not yet seen a single one of them successfully plant a lick on Timey's face. The pattern is always the same. One of them will try and sneak up on him. He won't react in any way until they pounce, at which point he dodges. They laugh and unsuccessfully try to catch him, while he just stares down at them blankly, and eventually they give up and skitter off. I'm sure that in reality he's just grossed out by the idea of being licked on the face, but I like to imagine that he's protecting his honor for me. Jay's the only one allowed to lick my face. Big on, thoughts. Yaz turns her face to me and asks, "What are you giggling at?" with a sly grin. "Nothing," I lie innocently. Yasmin is clearly unconvinced, but I'm rescued from further inquiry by Griv and Vig showing up. "You ready?" Vig asks my boyfriend. "Yes," he answers, standing from his seat beside me on the ground. I reach out to give his hand a little squeeze and wish him good luck. His expressionless face turns back to me and briefly has the ghost of a smile hover over it. "We'll be watching from here. Put on a good show for us," teases Yasmin. Griv's perspective. We have to say, when they told us that this guy was the best hunter in the galaxy, we were skeptical. Sure, he's surprisingly nimble from how I've seen him dance away from folk who want to play with him, but he's so tall and so skinny. You'd think that if he was that good, he'd have a bit more meat on his bones. If he stood upright, he'd be nearly twice the height of the ferns and prey would spot him easily. The clothes he wears are all in quite eye-catching shades of brown. All that being said, he moves like a shadow. Crouching down to make himself not much taller than us, He's still able to move so quickly. He carries a bow, though it's not like the ones the monks of Rakhand use. We hear and smell the grasshopper deer we've been tracking, and turn to the party to signal them to stop. The Terran is not there. Then, from around 20 meters away, I hear whip, whip, followed by a harsh whistling shriek. Yasmin's perspective. Jay and I are watching the feed from the camera attached to her boyfriend's helmet as he creeps along the back of the hunting party. Suddenly, based on cues he's picked up on, and we haven't, he breaks from the line and begins stalking along his own path through the undergrowth. He pops his head over the ferns for an instant, allowing us the briefest of glimpses at a small herd of grazing animals at the edge of the forest. Back beneath cover, we see the top edge of a bow and a hand holding 2 arrows. In a single fluid motion, he stands just high enough to see the animal again, draws his bow and looses the first arrow, and, in a fraction of a second, has knocked, drawn, and loosened the next. He begins darting through the undergrowth the same instant as we hear a pained wail from the animal. He bursts from cover and gives us another momentary glimpse of the creature that looks like an unholy mashup of a locust and a fallow deer, staggering woozily, with an arrow shaft sticking out of one of its eyes, and another in its neck. The rest of the herd are scattering for the forest. The man whose perspective we're looking from leaps onto his back, pulling it over. There is a brief flash of silver, after which the struggling very quickly ceases. The whole thing lasted maybe 20 seconds from start to finish. My mouth hangs agape at what I just witnessed. I turn to Jay, who's looking as dumbstruck as I feel. "Fucking hell!" curses Jay. "You didn't know he could do that?" I ask. "I didn't have a clue. I didn't think there was anyone alive who could do that. If I didn't know where this footage was coming from, I'd have thought it was test footage from someone's attempt to illegally engineer a cutting-edge assassin droid. I mean, I knew he was the best in the galaxy and all, but that was inhuman. He just instantly identified, targeted, shot and hit weak points on a species of animal that, as far as I know, he'd never even seen before, then rushed it down and stabbed it to death. That was..." She trails off. "A little frightening?" I suggest. "Yeah," she admits uncomfortably. "Like, since we met, I've kind of thought of him as... It sounds bad to say, but like a little lost puppy. He had so little understanding of anything and everything we take here for granted to know. I felt this really strong Something flickers across her face as she readjusts what she was about to say. Protective urge. That was less like a lost puppy and more like a starving wolf. I grunted in agreement. At this point, the twig emerged from the ferns. Vig laughs. "Maybe you are the best Lucklet." Timentia does not answer, other than to continue to stare at the little woman. Her half-brother, Grief, raises his hand and points it forward, past our POV. "Set the butchering it." "No," states Timentia flatly, his voice translated into English by Hollow, for my benefit, since I don't like using translators and Evenki isn't a language I know yet. All the twigs stare back quizzically. "What do you mean, no?" asks Twig, looking wary. "If you butcher it in the field, you will waste its blood. We should take it back to your village, where we can butcher it properly first." The twig chuckle and share knowing looks with each other. "Well and good to say, Stringbean, but how do you want us to carry that thing?" elaborates Vig. "Like this," he answers, simply and neutrally. Our view shifts as the man turns to the animal he just killed. A right hand reaches out and gathers the 4 hind legs into a bundle, mostly including the spindly, chitinous ankles in his grip. A left hand then does the same for the forelegs. Pulling some kind of maneuver that the helmet cam doesn't give us a good view of, he lifts the animal onto his shoulders. Jay's and my eyes go wide in disbelief for the second time in as many minutes. When the camera turns to show the twig again, they're wearing similarly incredulous expressions. "Don't be stupid," protests Mavak. That thing's got to weigh more than you do. You'll never make it more than 50 steps. I've carried heavier loads further, he answers unfazed, though without the slightest hint of smugness or arrogance in his words. There's a stunned silence for a few moments, then all the Twig burst out into laughter. First he kills for us, and now he carries for us. I've never known someone to be a greedy for work before, laughs Griv. For the sake of a little bit of blood, adds Vertold. Don't be afraid to say if it turns out it's too much, cautions Vig more seriously. I wouldn't be, and it won't be, answers Thymantia in his typical laconic style. With that, the band begins making their way back the way they came. Well, I puff. One part of the purpose of sending him was fulfilled at least. He definitely seems to have ingratiated himself, and by extension us, with them. He seems to have forgotten that we also wanted to see them hunt. Sorry you didn't get that data. Jay shakes her head. No, don't be. This has been quite informative.